When you won your first Emmy, did you know about it?
No. I used to throw the invites in the trash.
What was one of the biggest films, TV shows, or events that you worked on?
One of the biggest movies I worked on was a movie called, we would have incidents where we would hit stuff or the engine would quit running, it would fall out of the sky. One of my best friends on earth died in a helicopter crash. And he and I flew together so much that when he crashed and was killed, everyone just assumed I was killed too. So we had this really funny interview, which is him mostly just staring at me with an odd look on his face, like, something wrong with you?
Kobe's helicopter crash. Did his helicopter pilot not have any sort of GPS or anything on there to kind of understand that, all right, you know what? There's literally a mountain in front of me, or I'm flying in an area that I shouldn't be flying in. What really happened with Kobe's accident?
I had just gone from, living my life, doing whatever, to all of a sudden I find out, well, mom is dying and it won't be long. He decided not to hire someone from Hollywood and moved them to Florida, to instead hire this kid who has no skills but keeps showing up to his Florida office. And so from there, I started working behind the scenes on all the biggest movie and television shows, and traveling with these helicopter cameras and flying around the country.
We have a special guest with us today, Mr. David Alan Arnold. How you doing, David?
I'm honored to be here. You guys have some amazing guests, so just to be on this couch for me is a lot of fun.
We haven't had an Emmy Award winner with us.
You're the first.
Okay, and bar has been set.
And you're the first guest that flew in here. Did you fly here or no?
I fly a lot. I actually walked here.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you, when you won your first Emmy, did you know about it?
No. I used to throw the invites in the trash. For really the first 20 years of my career, I was the most private member of any TV crew I worked on. And my own next door neighbors, my close friends, my family, I never said a word to them of what I do at work. And fast forward, at a certain time in my life, I ran into some issues at a school bus stop with crime. And so I started to have to deal with it. And then that led me to in a backwards way, having to get involved in politics, and, to get the school bus stop made safer. And next thing I know, I'm having to tell stories publicly. And so for me, it was very foreign. I never, when I wrote the first book, my own family sent me text messages of what the fuck. Can I say that?
Yes.
Okay. Because my own immediate family had never heard any of the stories that are in the book.
Why were you so private, though?
I was so comfortable like that. If you lived next door to me and the topic came up, I would usually ask questions about you, your family. What do you do? How's your house? How do you get your grass so green? And if you asked me what I did, I would just say, I'm a cameraman. And a lot of times that was enough. And sometimes people would say, well, cameraman for what? And I would say, all kinds of stuff, sports, really any kind of, any genre.
Deep sea fishing?
Yeah, fishing, anything. I would never go into detail. Oh, well, I'm in a helicopter hovering next to the boats on Deadliest Catch while they're crashing through the waves. And the Bering Sea water is freezing to the boats. I could be killed at any second. I just never talked to anyone. And because for my work, it really is like that. It's working in my office in a helicopter for a TV show or a movie I learned through the years is actually sensory overload. when we take a director or a producer with us, a lot of times they freeze up. They can't speak. And there were TV shows where I flew, even in a calm, not so dangerous place like Hollywood. And I have to sort of like lean forward and go over the top of their shoulder and take the shot list out of their hands, because they're sitting in the front of the helicopter next to the pilot who's doing all these camera moves through Hollywood. And the noise is super loud in these helicopters. That's why we wear headsets, and the helicopter's so loud. And outside these beautiful plexiglass bubbles is planet Earth, and they can see 50 or 100 stories straight down below their feet. So their brain is like, whoa, that's death. And then they're having to like go through a list of things we're supposed to film, and their brains turn off. It actually becomes like too much. They can't process anything. And sometimes we've had where they just freeze. They can't even speak. And I just reach over and I grab the shot list out of their hands, and I read down to where we are in our day. I go, okay, next we're going to shoot the Hollywood Bowl. Okay, so the pilot flies over, and we, fly a circle around the Hollywood Bowl, and I zoom in, zoom out. I know what the editors want to see. I know what they're going to use in the show or the movie. And so me and the pilot just knock out the shot list now that I have it. And so because it is kind of sensory, I mean, we might be flying over a volcano and it's bubbling up, and it could kill us. And because it's so crazy, I just became very, very comfortable never speaking of it, never saying a word to anyone, and we would have incidents where we would hit stuff or the engine would quit running and we'd fall out of the sky. And I just would never tell anyone.
So in your book, the opening chapter begins with you and your co-pilot flying over the Arctic, and you're flying over what would essentially be a pack of grizzly bears, and the engine seizes and you guys fall. Now, seeing helicopters on TV and in movies, when they fall, it's not like a plane. I mean, it's a complete disaster majority of the time. I'm reading through this and I'm like, I'm surprised you guys didn't bend into like an accordion at that point. You slid, you crashed, you slid, the engine came back on, or your co-pilot, right, went out, and
my pilot
or your pilot.
I'm a cameraman. I'm not a pilot. So the pilot managed our crash landing in such a way that the aircraft didn't tumble and rip itself apart. So he got it down on the skids. And I never knew this, having heard about auto rotation, which is what you do when the engine stops. I never realized that a lot of times when they hit the ground, they slide a long ways because they haven't dissipated their forward speed. And so they get the skids on the ground, which is super important. And typically they still have forward motion. So the helicopter will just slide across the ground. Now, there is a kind of a misconception about helicopters. People believe because helicopter crashes are so scary, they believe that they're inherently more dangerous. But the truth is, if you lose an engine in a helicopter, a lot of times you are 100 times better off than if you're in an airplane without power, because the airplane needs that same thing. It needs a long stretch of flat, unobstructed terrain, like a road or a runway, so that the airplane, the pilot, can dissipate their forward energy. So they get the wheels on the ground, and then they have to stop, but it takes a distance. And if you're over a city or a bunch of rocks, you don't necessarily have that much flat, unobstructed room to do that. Whereas a helicopter, a lot of times they can auto rotate right onto a helipad. so basically a point. They could theoretically land in between cars in a parking lot because if they don't need a long run on, they can just set it down.
By auto rotate, what did you mean by that?
So people think when the engine of a helicopter quits that it just falls like a brick. But depending on the machine and the design of the rotor system, they can actually continue to fly. And again, depending on the rotor system and the amount of inertia it has in it, the pilot is looking for a place to land, but he's still in control of the machine. And so, sometimes my pilots will be flying over Los Angeles or something, and we're going to go get fuel, and they'll cross over the airport, and you'll say, "Okay, Dave, here we go. We're going to auto," and they'll roll the throttle back, which takes the power out of the engine, and they lower the collective, and they basically steer us down to our landing spot, and it's basically like coasting. And
so if the propeller completely stops, you can still coast and land.
So the reason it's called auto rotation, let's say you're flying the president to the White House and both engines fail. Well, the pilots have trained and practiced for that. And what they'll do is it's called lowering the collective. So they basically take the power out of the rotary wing. So now the aircraft descends and the air is coming up through the rotor blades. And because of how they've adjusted the collective pitch of both blades, or all four blades, for example, the air pressure is going up through the blades like a fan in reverse, and it spins the blades. And they do that because they want a certain RPM. So now they're coming down, they're steering to where they want to land. There's no power from the engines, so somewhere in the White House lawn. They pick their spot. Okay, we can make it to there. And because the air is auto-rotating the blades, once they get to that spot, they can now pull the power back in, and it slows the aircraft. The aircraft comes into ground effect. So now the blades have even more power than they did up there, and because they're pressing right against the ground, and they cushion the descent and basically gently stop the aircraft and set it on the grass next to the White House.
That sounds terrifying.
It's funny because I think, who were we having the discussion with about a week ago or a few days ago? Because
Me.
right?
Yeah, we were having a discussion about that.
And because I remember years ago, I saw a short on YouTube of, I think it was some military helicopter that was landing to show we can land even if the propeller, the engine's off. And that's the first time I learned about that it's possible to land a helicopter if the engine shuts off. Because everybody knows, let's say if you're flying a Cessna or whatever plane, you can glide. And I think depending on the weight and size of the plane, it's coming down about 500 to 1,000 feet per minute gliding down. So if you're 20,000 feet up, you've got, 10, 15, 20 minutes to find a landing strip, like you said. But with the helicopter, you just need like a 20, 30 feet of space practice, right?
Yeah, you don't need much room. So there was one helicopter pilot in Los Angeles. He lost his engine, and he literally landed on top of one of the rooftop helipads, which is just a small disc on top of the building. And going back to the president, okay, he can't do that in Air Force One. If Air Force One loses all four engines, they need a big area. They'll be fine, but they need a big flat area to get the airplane down and get it stopped. Whereas Air Force or Marine One does not need a giant slab of flat earth to safely get the airplane down and stopped. The Marine One just needs an area pretty much the size of the helicopter where they can get the aircraft down and stopped and everyone can get out.
Because some of the newer planes, like the Cessnas and the Cirruses,
Cirrus mainly, not the.
I think the new Cessnas have it too. It's got a built-in parachute where you can launch it, and obviously once you launch it, I think the plane is kind of done in a sense. But at least you get to land safely. But helicopters, I've never heard of a helicopter having a parachute.
they've experimented with it. I think there's at least one product line that has it, as a feature. And, a lot of times when the planes use their parachute, it's simply because the pilot is confused. So in the case of Cirrus aircraft, it could be someone who accidentally flew themselves into the clouds, because that's what happened to Kobe's helicopter. He accidentally flew into the clouds and got confused, and the helicopter flipped over and crashed into the ground. Well, that happens to airplane pilots. And some of those guys don't have the skills to fly in the clouds, and they don't know where they are, and they don't know where anything is, and they don't know if they're turning or not. And typically what happens is they accidentally start turning, and they enter what's known as a death spiral. And they don't know. They can't really feel it. But the plane is spiraling into the ground. And so a lot of times when the Cirrus owners will use their parachutes because they're in the clouds and they don't know where anything is, and they say, you know what? Screw it. Pull the thing. It's called a ballistic parachute. It shoots out of the plane and opens. And now they can just sort of chill and float down through the cloud. And even if they're over a mountain, well, now they're not going to hit the mountain at 100 miles an hour. Now they're just going to gently set down on the mountain. And so it's a real lifesaver.
So you brought up Kobe's helicopter crash. As far as his accident that took place, did his helicopter pilot not have any sort of GPS or anything on there to kind of understand that, all right, you know what? There's literally a mountain in front of me, or I'm flying in an area that I shouldn't be flying in. What really happened with Kobe's accident?
Again, I'm not a pilot, so there's not too much I can say outside of the headlines, except that they got into the clouds and the pilot was confused, as far as my understanding. It's very easy to do. I've talked to many helicopters who have done it. I was talking to Black Hawk pilots one day, and they were flying kind of in and out of the clouds just to get somewhere. And both pilots kept getting confused. So they're flying this Black Hawk, and the weather's kind of like
iffy.
Kind of iffy. So sometimes they're out of the clouds, sometimes they poke in the clouds a little bit. And the pilot who's flying, the other pilot starts yelling at him, bro, my machine. So the other guy takes the controls. And the first pilot is like, well, why'd you do that? You were starting to turn. I was? Yeah. So the other pilot was watching the instruments, and the first pilot didn't realize he was a little bit in the clouds, couldn't see the horizon very well, and got confused. And unbeknownst to him, he was starting to turn. And the other pilot saw that. He goes, hey, my machine. So he takes over, and he's flying now. And then the other pilot starts yelling at him, bro, what are you doing? My machine. He takes the controls back. And now the other pilot is saying, what'd you do that for? And he goes, you were starting to turn. I was? And it was happening to both of them. And so the pilot who was watching the instruments knew, but the guy on the controls didn't. And that's how easy it is when you enter the clouds, or even bad visibility.
There's no like auto, I don't know what it would be called, balance or gate, where it just kind of, if it notices you're swaying to the right or left or whatever, for it to bring it back to balance. Because technically a helicopter, I mean, unless you're deliberately turning, it's not supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be straight, just like most aircraft.
Every year they build more and more safety into the helicopters that they're building. However, you have to know to turn that on. So if you can't feel that you're starting to turn, you wouldn't even bother with that. That's like you're driving your car down the freeway and everything feels fine, but unbeknownst to you, you're actually starting to cross over into the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of experienced that actually this morning. I was driving my kids to school, and in the canyons, it was very foggy, and you literally couldn't see more than 20 feet ahead of you. So I kind of had to bring my head closer to the windshield and kind of squinting my eyes to make sure I could see ahead of me, because sometimes those cars don't have the lights on, as far as, the
tail lights.
Tail lights. when you're supposed to in the canyon or during a fog, right? So I was squinting and trying to make sure I see all the cars ahead of me, but it makes sense, especially if you're in the air. There is no lane, there is no mountain, there are no trees for you to be able to gauge anything. So you have to be able to rely on the instruments, I would think.
What I would say is the aircraft are getting better and safer all the time. And it's just as far as getting lost in the clouds and accidentally either turning and causing a problem and falling out of the sky or hitting something is one of the most common type of aircraft accidents. So it was a freak accident that happened to Kobe, but it can be done. And so, in the world of aviation, they just build in more and more safety to avoid situations like that. But then you add a person like an NBA player or a president or the owner of a major corporation, and their time is valuable. They don't like to hear, well, sir, I don't know if we can land where we're going. Might not be able to land there. We might have to divert, over here, which is a 2-hour drive to where you're going. 2 hours?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Can't you just go take a look? All right, sir. Well, I wouldn't normally, but just for you, I'll just at least go take it, and then next thing you know, we're having a problem that we wouldn't have had.
And in Kobe's case, it costed him, his daughter, and the lives of many others.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's what happened to Kobe. I'm just painting the picture.
No. I know. But a lot of people have somewhat talked about that as being Kobe's quote unquote ego, that he was very adamant about being somewhere at the right place at the right time, not being late. He didn't like driving because he didn't want to be stuck in traffic because of whether it was back issues or legs or just being so, he was so injured back in the days that he couldn't sit in the car for a very long time. So everything was kind of like chop, chop.
Plus, he was accustomed he lived in Newport Beach, and even flying to the Crypto, back then the Staples Center, he would fly in a helicopter every game. He wouldn't drive from Newport Beach to LA.
Random fact, by the way.
What is it?
The same pilot that took Kobe, me and my family went with him to Catalina Island. He took us to Catalina Island.
When you're involved in an accident, choosing the right attorney is the most important decision you could ever make. Let us show you why Megeredchian Law is different from everybody else. With a full litigation team of over 11 attorneys, we're able to take your case to trial. More importantly, the foundational pedigree of our business is customer service, so you'll always get a call. And lastly, we're results driven. We win. Let us show you how. Give us a call, 818-530-1300 or www.bestcaraccidentattorney.com.
Some doctors treat pain, others help you understand it. Dr. Rafi Gureghian has dedicated his career to helping people live stronger, healthier, and more aware of their bodies. His approach goes beyond quick fixes. It's about rebuilding movement, discipline, and mindset. A true professional who's changing the way people think about health and recovery. Presented by the WiseNuts Podcast, highlighting leaders who make a difference.
Sorry, man. I am terrified of helicopters. I don't think I would ever set foot in a helicopter.
Well, let me dispel that for you. It's helicopter travel is one of the safest ways to travel. In the case of Kobe Bryant, he traveled by helicopter for years, maybe his whole career.
Yeah.
And just that one day they had a freak accident. And, for me, it's a reminder. It's not like, oh, we should all fear helicopters. It's actually the opposite. It's more like, well, here's a dude who was in an industry unto himself. He was so beloved that when he had his accident, millions of people grieved as if a member of their family had been lost.
100%. 100%.
And so if a guy like that can be walking along through his life, 1 second he's the king of the world, and then the next second he's gone. It's just a reminder to me that life is precious, and none of us have a guarantee of safety. And even a guy who's flying in one of the most successful and safest aircraft, which is what he was in. He was flying in a machine that Donald Trump flies in. He was flying in a machine that heads of state fly in. It's very solid. It's very safe. So if he can have a problem, what could happen to me in traffic?
It's interesting we're talking about Kobe today, because this morning, driving my boys to school, I was actually playing. Some mornings I'll play like motivational clips on YouTube, and they'll just listen to it. And this morning I was playing different speeches, kind of like a collection of Kobe Bryant speeches. And man, while driving, it made me very emotional. And the fact that now we're talking about Kobe is kind of ironic, because some of the things he was talking about, his winning spirit and his mentality, the Mamba mindset mentality. And because I have like a 20-25 minute drive every morning, and I was listening to that. It made me very emotional.
I can't believe it's going to be 6 years in January.
Yeah, January 22nd, I think it was.
Yeah, it's going to be 6 years. But going back to you, David, you've been filming from the skies for years, but your life began somewhat at rock bottom. In fact, in your book, you mentioned something about at the age of 3 being thrown out a window.
Yeah.
Can you go into detail about that? Because what you said in the book was you were looking out the window and you would see mom pull in as far as the driveway. And that one day, something lifted you up as you're grasping onto the rails of your bed, of your crib. And next thing you know, you're out the window.
Yeah, this is one of my earliest memories. When I was teeny tiny, I knew when my mom would come home from work. And so where my room is facing the street. And so like a prisoner, I would just sit in my crib and holding the bars, and I'm just watching. Like that's what dogs do. Dogs just sit and watch out the window and wait for you to come home. And I'm just like that. I'm just watching out the window because I know she's coming. And then all of a sudden I had this sensation of floating up out of the crib. And so I've got the bars in my hands and I'm trying to push myself down, but I can't. I'm not strong enough. I'm just going. So I get pulled out and I'm trying to scream, but nothing comes out of my mouth. So my mouth is just open and no sound. And I float out the window and I go over the top of the roof. So now I can see the rocks on top of the roof, and I'm floating above the roof of our home. And that's the last thing I remember.
But how did you fly out of the crib? What happened?
I have no idea. Maybe it was a dream, or I have no idea. That's what happened.
Because it's funny. I have a similar story when I was 3 years old. We were living in Armenia, and I was very attached to my dad. So I would always wait, kind of like you, we lived on the 4th floor. And I would go near the window and wait for my dad to get home from work. So one evening, while my mom is ironing, we had these like bars, not fully the length of the window, but about a little more than halfway. It was like these metal bars. That was obviously to prevent kids from falling off the 4th story. Because in Armenia, most people lived in like 5-story buildings. Not
high rises, yeah.
Yeah, high rises. And that one evening while my mom was ironing, it's time for my dad to come home from work. So I decide to go to the window and climb that bars. So as I'm climbing, I notice somebody that looks like my dad. So I start calling him, Dad, 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 and trying to climb up. As I'm climbing, my mom notices I'm about to fall off. And she sneaks up very quietly. And I was like one step away from falling off the 4th floor. And she just grabs me by my shirt and just yanks me back. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here with the WiseNuts.
We almost lost a wise nut.
Yeah, exactly.
Who knows? Would the WiseNuts be here?
It would be the wise nut.
Yeah, it would be the WiseNut. See, the fact that you're saying that's all you recollect from that memory, that means either it was just kept a secret from you for forever, or it was a dream.
Well, the way I wrote the book is at times like that, I don't tell people what to think about it. I just say what happened. Now you can read the story and say, oh, it's just a typical child. He's just imagining something, or he was having a dream, or he floated out of the window. You know, I don't tell people what to think. I just explain the experience of what happened, and then they can interpret it any way they want.
But did your mom tell you if it was real or it was a dream? Or
I never talked to anyone about that until I wrote the book.
so then I'm assuming if it was real, your mom would have like brought it up and said, "Hey, remember when you were 3, you were up on the roof and while I was coming home from work?" No, or
Because it
No,
sounds
they-
like somebody threw him out the window. When you're reading it,
yeah.
No, it was like hovering. It was like slowly lifting off the ground, and then floating out the window, and then just like as if I was holding onto a balloon, and the balloon is just drifting out over the roof and then back behind the house.
That was your first experience as a helicopter cameraman then.
That was one of my earliest, if not my earliest memory, you know, and I don't really worry about it. So I never like felt pressure to figure it out. Like, did I hallucinate? Was I abducted by aliens?
that's so fascinating.
But this, I have I had another story with a tiger in Armenia. I swear, I'm surprised.
You've never heard this story?
Were there bars involved again? You
Yes.
climbed over the bars? What is it with you and bars?
So my dad used to always take me to the zoo, and this one time I was like 4 or 5 years old. We go to the zoo, and the tiger cage had the main cage where the tiger was, and then there was like a 2-3 feet distance, and then there was another cage where the feeders would go into, and then that's how they would feed the tiger. So my dad takes me to the zoo, which he would often, and he runs into somebody he knows. So as he's chit-chatting with him, I kind of sneak off into the tiger cage in between where the feeders would go into, and I put my hand out like I'm trying to call the tiger to come so I can pet the tiger. It's a good thing the tiger had probably been fed earlier, because it was just sitting there and looking at me. And again, my dad had to slowly sneak in and pull me out.
This guy likes to play with death.
Wow, your poor parents.
Yeah,
Wow.
Well, he tested mom. Now he's like, let me test dad. But with dad, we'll go to the extreme.
let's get eaten by a tiger.
Let me go fuck with the tigers. Jeez.
Sometimes it doesn't matter if they've eaten. Sometimes they just bite to do it
Just to do it. Right?
because they're the king.
But as far as your story is concerned now, going back to your book, you were one of those individuals that was struggling in life. You, as I mentioned, rock bottom. Now, there was something that you mentioned as far as you digging through the trash, pulling out old work boots, and then you snapped a photo of those work boots and included it in sort of like resume or something.
Yeah. You know, I travel the world, and I use these really high-tech computerized camera gimbals to do TV shows and movie work and helicopters. And people look at that, and one of the number one questions I get from young people who are curious, they'll go, "Did you go to school for this?" And I did not. I went to high school. And I decided when I was in high school, I wanted to work in television and movies. And this is a long time ago. So back then we didn't have YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. The only way to make a video like the one we're doing right now And for people to see it is you pretty much had to go to Hollywood or New York, and you had to work on a movie or a TV show. That's the path. And I lived in Florida, which was very far from Hollywood. And so there was no way for me to come out of high school and start working in the Hollywood film business. But I've never been reasonable. And so I never let the natural reasons not to do a thing stop me. So I said, well, okay, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this happen. And so in those days, we didn't have internet, but we had a book that was about 3 inches thick called the Yellow Pages. And you could go in there and every business in town was in that book listed. And sometimes they had an ad. So I would look for any company that had anything to do with any sort of video or film production. And I didn't care if they made commercials for the local sandwich shop or if it was a local cable television station and they were doing public access. I didn't care what it was. I would just show up at the address under their name in the Yellow Pages, and I would knock on the door, or I would just walk in and start talking to them, and I would offer to work for free. So when kids today, they ask, well, how can I get a job like your job? I always tell them, I go, well, whatever you like to do, whatever interests you, find the people who do it and just start helping them. Don't worry about if they're going to hire you or not, because they won't.
Yeah.
They're not going to hire you if they don't know who you are. But if you keep coming around and helping them, you'll get hired.
That's great advice, by the way.
It worked for me. And no one told me that. I just started doing, I would just show up and whatever they did, if they did sandwich commercials, I would just say, hey, I could help you. You don't have to pay me. I'll just start helping you. And finally there was one of those businesses that I would visit, and I had index cards. So I would go through my box of index cards, and every time your index card came up, I'd go to your building and knock on the door. And one of those doors, the guy behind the door got mad. And he said, hey, I'll never forget this. Quit coming around here. We have no use for you. All we do are helicopter cameras. And he just stared at me like, see, you don't know how to do anything with helicopter cameras. And so I'm listening and I go, oh, I'm sorry. I won't bother you again. I'm so sorry. So I physically scratched them off the list on my index card and I, threw it away. Won't bother that guy again. But he was the guy at the front desk, that had to deal with everything from deliveries to whatever.
The gatekeeper.
Yeah, he's the gatekeeper. So he wasn't interested in me working for free. And I said, okay, won't bother him again. Didn't hurt my feelings. And then some weeks later, I got a phone call from that company. And it wasn't the guy at the front desk. It was the guy past the front desk, down the hall, and around the corner in the big office. It was the big boss of the whole company. And he seemed like he was half amused and half curious about this kid who keeps coming to work but isn't on the payroll at the company. And he calls and it's like a puzzle he's trying to figure out how to solve. It's like, what's your deal? You make money doing this? Oh yeah, I make money. And he goes, you know what? One of my guys just quit, and we didn't know he was quitting. He just quit. And he said, I think you should come interview.
And how old are you at this time?
I was 24 years old, so not old enough to rent a car. And I said, oh, okay. So I go down and now I'm sitting across his desk. And again, he's like half curious, half amused. Like, what's your deal? What is your deal? Like, it was almost like he wanted to know why I keep showing up at his office and I don't work there. And so we had this really funny interview, which is him mostly just staring at me with an odd look on his face, like, something wrong with you? and then he starts to get down to brass tacks. And he goes, yeah, one of my guys just quit. So now it's on me. I have to replace him. And I'm expected to get someone from Hollywood or New York with a giant credit list and solid resume and film and television and big movies and TV shows. And I'm listening and I go, well, that ain't me. And every way he can, he tells me that I can't be hired to work there. He's like, nobody here would hire. One of the funniest things he said to me was, he goes, nobody here would hire you, but it's not their decision, it's mine. And he's just like studying me.
And this is during the interview.
Yeah, this is the conversation we had. I call it an interview, but really it was just him like asking me odd questions and me saying like whatever I could say back to him.
How long was this conversation?
It wasn't super long, but it was long enough for me to figure out that, oh my God, here I've dreamed of working in big movies and TV shows, but there are none where I live in Florida. But I didn't care. That's what I'm going to do. So here I am knocking on doors in a town that has we're 3,000 miles from Hollywood. But that's my dream, is I'm knocking on all these doors where I live. And unbeknownst to me, this little company that had been making like corporate videos and stuff had been purchased by an international conglomerate that manufactured the first ever gyro-stabilized cameras that were ever used on TV and film. So before them, the only thing we could do from a helicopter was like a shaky camera. You couldn't really zoom in on anything because the more you zoom in, the more the picture shakes. That's all we had. And then these guys invented this technology to hold the camera still. So the aircraft can now do anything it wants. And the camera just sits perfectly still and just shows. So
the first steady cam, basically.
Yeah, in the air, it's powered.
Yeah.
And so it revolutionized filmmaking. And they purchased this little company. So the building I went to said CRM Group. But it wasn't the CRM Group anymore. It had been purchased by this technology company. And unbeknownst to me, in this brick building in this little town in Florida, they were working on every major, and I mean Steven Spielberg, the biggest movies were lining up to get this technology into their films. So if you were going to make a blockbuster film and spend $100 million, they wanted this camera from the CRM Group. And same with television, all the biggest television shows with millions of people watching. It could be the World Series or the Super Bowl or Monday Night Football or any event that's on live television. Same thing. They want this technology so that they can show their audience a sense of place. If it's Monday Night Football, they want a stabilized, not a shaky camera, which is all we had ever had. They want a steady picture from a helicopter to show, the city of Chicago and Lake Michigan and the beautiful high-rise buildings. And, there's Wrigley Field. And the lights are on. This is where they're playing. And now the audience just has this incredible sense of, this is where we are right now, and then down to the field. And because it was in so demand, the crew who worked here was really overworked. They would finish shooting the baseball game in Chicago, and then they would have to immediately just box up the camera and start driving to the next movie shoot or next TV show. And they would finish filming that one, flying over that one with Steven Spielberg, and then they would land and take the camera apart, put it in the box, and start driving to the next location. There was no breaks. And so one of them had just quit. I can't do this anymore, but I'm out. And now, while that's going on, the big boss is hearing, hey, that kid came again. What kid? That kid, he always comes like every couple of weeks and says he wants to work for free. He wants to work for free? He's hearing this. And all of a sudden he has to hire somebody, and he's supposed to get someone from the big film centers of New York or Hollywood. but there's this kid who keeps showing up and he's not getting paid. And he's just like, the wheels are turning. It's like, huh. And so this is a high stress environment. There's a lot of pressure, to constantly keep, doing the work for the TV shows and movies and then immediately going to the next one. And here's this kid who shows up and we're not even paying him. He just keeps coming. Like, if there's one human being who will not complain under all this pressure, that might be him, even though he doesn't know anything. So the big boss, he's looking at me funny and he goes, I'm supposed to hire someone from Hollywood or New York, and I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll let you know in a couple of days what I decide. I said, oh, okay, thank you. So I go home. And now I know there's this business in my little town that works on all the biggest movies and TV shows. So I can't believe this. And it's like winning the lottery. And I'm thinking, oh man, the last thing he said to me before I walked out the door, he goes, you have no technical skills. Nobody here wants to hire you. They would not hire you. He goes, the only thing that you have is you seem hungry. Are you hungry? And he just kind of looks at me like, what's your deal? And now I've left and I know he's going to decide who to hire. And I'm thinking, man, I'm so hungry. I can't stand it. How do I show him how hungry I am? I don't know. I know I have to find a way to show him that I will do a good job and I will figure out how to do whatever that it is they do. Like he won't be sad if he hires me. How am I going to show him this? And I'm taking out the trash at my apartment, and in the bottom of the dumpster, I saw the most perfect thing. I got so excited. I literally dove into the dumpster and I got my hands on an old, disgusting, filthy work boot that someone had thrown away. It was all ripped up and it was covered in oil. And I thought, this is the thing I needed. And I brought it back to my house and I set my dinner table with a nice plate. And I didn't drink wine, but I put like soda in a wine glass. Like it looks like I'm having a glass of wine with dinner. And the dinner on the plate is this disgusting, filthy, oil-soaked work boot. And I took a fork and a knife and I had a big smile on my face as I'm cutting into the boot to eat it. And we didn't have computers back then, so I actually cut and pasted the picture, and I used a typewriter. And I said, "Dear Ed, you asked if I was hungry," and then you open it up, and it's this picture of me eating my disgusting, filthy boot with a big smile on my face. And I wrote underneath there, "Does this answer your question?" And I had it delivered to his office while he was theoretically deciding who to hire. And about a month later, his marketing director, she was just laughing and she goes, "The second he saw the picture of you eating your boot, you had the job."
And that's basically what sealed the deal with him.
Yeah, I think he kind of knew that I would be an enthusiastic worker, but when I put it together in that graphic way, he decided not to hire someone from Hollywood and move them to Florida, to instead hire this kid who has no skills, but keeps showing up to his Florida office. And so from there, I started working behind the scenes on all the biggest movie and television shows, and traveling with these helicopter cameras and flying around the country.
And you were living by yourself, right? You weren't living with mom or anybody else, right?
I had moved. I grew up in a little rural part of Florida, and I had moved from there to Melbourne, Florida.
Uh-huh.
So that's where I was living. And there was basically no television or film industry in Melbourne, Florida. So to find this little tiny business that works on all the big productions was shocking. And I embraced it. And I quickly became known as the kind of company man who would just stay all night and work just to clean up the shop.
Yeah, because you mentioned that you would basically just kind of organizing things and sweeping.
Yeah, because I didn't have technical skills. I didn't know how to build these cameras and fix them when they broke. I didn't know how to put them onto a helicopter. I didn't know how to do any of that. And so I'm here by myself because all the other guys are out working on the World Series and the Steven Spielberg movie and whatever is happening that week. So I'm by myself in the shop and no one said anything to me, but I just thought, man, this shop is a mess. Because they never had time to clean anything. They would roll in from a TV show, take the camera, put it together, figure out which wires had broken on the last show, solder them together, get the camera working again, take it apart, put it back in the box, and then drive to the next show. And meanwhile, the whole shop is a pile. It's a mess. It's just junk everywhere. And so I'm here by myself. No one said a word to me. I just said, you know what? I think I can clean all this up. And so I started sweeping the floor. So I got the floor clean. That took several hours. And then I went to all the workbenches, which were covered in, like circuit boards and computer parts and soldering irons and electronic equipment that I didn't know how to use, but I could make it neat. So I would just throw away all the trash and organize. And then I would start to clear spaces because these workbenches are covered with junk. And when I was done with a workbench, it would be open and clean and empty. So the guys could walk in and they could take one of these camera systems and put it on the table and, take it apart and work on it.
Is that when you started studying and memorizing the manuals of become an expert at how to use the cameras and how to break it apart and fix it?
Yeah. So I took the maintenance manual for the gyro stabilized camera. It's about that thick. And I read it into a tape recorder. And so I would listen to it on headphones. And
you may want to explain what a tape recorder is because some of our audience has never seen one.
So before we had smartphones, the only way to listen to stuff that you could carry around with you was on these cassettes. And so I would take a cassette, I would put it in a recorder.
The Walkmans, right?
Yeah, I would, and I could listen to it in my car, or I could put it in a Walkman and I could carry it with me while I'm exercising and listen to it there. I would just listen to it all the time. And so I got to a point where I could quote this thick technical manual, which reads like the fine print on your iPhone. So imagine that, but it's so much of it that it's in a book that's 2 inches thick. And I read all that technical data into the tape recorder, and then I would just listen to it over and over. And the guys who worked there figured out that I was reading the book, because when something broke, they would call the factory and say, "Hey, I need that yellow elbow part that connects to the grooved disc underneath the camera. I need that." And then the guys at the military factory are going, okay. And then they would figure out the actual part name and number to get one and ship it to this office. And so very quickly, the guys got to where they would bring me a part and they would say, "Hey, Dave, what's that?" I say, Oh, that's the dome vehicle interface. Okay, thanks. And then they would call the factory. "Yeah, I need a dome vehicle interface." "Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll send one down to you."
You were the ChatGPT of your time, basically.
Yeah, because they knew how to use the machine and fix it, but they didn't know what the parts were called. And I had read the book so many times, even if I had never, because I wasn't using these machines yet, but you could bring me a part, and I had read the book so many times that I could tell from the shape and maybe what it was printed on it, what it was. And so that was how I made up for my lack of technical skills. Was I just overcompensated by religiously studying these technical manuals that came with the machines. And within 6 months, they were sending me out on TV shows and films. And so that was a very... In those days, there was no way to get onto the biggest movies and TV shows. You had to work for 30 years to get into a position like that. And I just showed up within 6 months I'm just there.
You know, your shoe story reminds me of a story I read in a business book. I want to say 15 or 20 years ago. I don't remember the title of the book, but so this young man in his 20s who just graduates from a university and he studied finance. He's trying to get into like the top 5, basically, I guess private equity or hedge funds like the Goldman Sachs and the BlackRocks of the world. So he's sending out his resume, every week, every month. Nobody's reading his resume, no interviews. So he's like, I need to come up with a creative way to get my foot in the door, to get an interview. So as he's thinking my foot in the door, he's like, how do I get my foot in the door? So he decides, you know what? I'm going to go buy a brand new pair of shoes, like nice shoes you would wear with the suit. He takes one of the shoe, puts it in a box with his resume, ships it to the boss. So, and in the letter, there's a cover letter, which he talks about himself. But then he says, in the beginning, he says, now that I have one foot in the door, I would love to get an interview. So that gets him the interview he wanted, and he ends up getting the job because of his creativity.
Yeah, and he's also showing them how much it means to him.
Yeah.
That he's willing to risk a beautiful pair of shoes just for the opportunity to speak with them in person.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fascinating how they gave you the opportunity without any experience to jump into a helicopter and film, as you mentioned, sporting events, movies, television shows. I mean, what was it that he saw in you?
I think that was it. I think the guys were overworked and burned out. And, when you're overworked and stressed out, you get grumpy. And at the same time, if there's this one kid who keeps showing up and he wants so badly to work here that he just keeps coming, even though we don't pay him, and the other guys are, dealing with the stress and the, it's not fair to tell someone they've been working for, 6 months straight and, oh, great, I finally get a weekend off at home. Nope. Steven Spielberg just called. You got to go. And once you finish there, get back in the van and drive over to this movie set and rig the camera in the helicopter. That's not fun.
Technology should move your business forward, not hold it back. At Titan Elite IT Services and Consulting, we make sure it does. Our clients don't wait days for help. They get real-time answers, fast resolutions, and dedicated support, both on-site and remote. From Los Angeles to Orange and Ventura counties, our coverage is local, statewide, and nationwide. When you need us, we're already on the way. We're not just an MSP. We build with you, from cloud migration to security to every endpoint in your network.
At Titan Elite, we don't just solve problems. We prevent them from happening. We become a part of your team and we grow with you.
Titan Elite IT Services and Consulting. Strategic, scalable, trusted, and always on.
Are you looking for a place to kick back and celebrate? Well, the Glenarden Club has got you covered. Upstairs, you got a private lounge with a cigar room. Downstairs, you got the Moose Den, where you can have cocktails and private events. Hey, are you even hungry? They got an outside pizzeria serving one of the best pizzas in town. If you're interested in becoming a member with the Glenarden Club or booking an event, contact the WiseNuts. We'll connect you to the boys at the Glenarden, and you could become a member here or host your next gathering. You're 24 years old now, and you're working for Hollywood. And what was one of the biggest films, TV shows, or events that you worked on?
One of the biggest movies I worked on was a movie called James Bond, The World Is Not Enough.
Ooh.
And
was that with Sean Connery?
No, Pierce Brosnan.
Oh, Pierce Brosnan.
So, going back to what a hard worker I was, I quickly became known amongst the cameramen who work on the big movies that if they got a Westcam, which is this gyro stabilized movie camera, on their next shoot, that I would begin working a week or two before the movie. So these guys could roll in, stay at the fancy hotel, go out to the airport, get in the helicopter, And by the time they got there, I had already spoken to every department in the movie. Importantly, I had inserted the correct ground glass with the proper aspect ratio so that when they turned the movie camera on in the helicopter, it showed the proper frame lines for the film. And all of those type of details I had seen to and set up. They didn't have to worry about it. Just when they got in, they knew everything would be right. And even if something broke, they knew I had been religiously working with the equipment to make sure nothing would break. So they didn't feel like, oh man, this is terrible. They just felt like, oh, you know what? Couldn't be helped. This thing just broke. So now we're going to go through it together. We're going to get it fixed and we're going to get our shots for the movie. But it's not Dave's fault. I know Dave's been checking this stuff for days and days. And so what would happen is on these projects, because to work on James Bond as a cameraman, you have to have loaded film for 20 years. Just loading the film. Then they might start to let you touch the camera. So you can like load the camera and turn it on and off and set the focus on the lens. Then another 10 years, they'll actually let you start to operate the camera. Okay. But because I was such a hard worker and I never complained, when something would happen, these cameramen on these movies, they would just let me run the camera. And I just started. I'm just, fresh out of high school, just rolled in, offered to work for free. They took me in and now I'm on the set of James Bond, The World's Not Enough. Well, we were having, among other things, we had terrorism. We filmed in Turkey and stuff was blowing up on the street. So the locations we had planned to use in Turkey, some of them, the producers just had to say, it's not safe. We can't take can't take 200 people to that street corner. Something might explode. So the schedule for the film is getting all jacked up. Like there's days where we can't film anything because where we're supposed to go, we're not allowed. And, meanwhile, the rest of the world life is going on. And so there became a point on James Bond where my cameraman had to leave. And I was such a hard worker. He just told the producers, he goes, you know what? These next shots in Azerbaijan, they're simple. Dave can do it. Don't worry about it. You don't have to get a guy from Hollywood or New York or London. Just let Dave shoot it. So now instead of loading the film and unloading it and, sending it to the laboratory, I'm also going to film in the helicopter. And, which is a very big deal in the movie industry. And so here I am in this helicopter and, before we had drones, all we had were movie pilots. These pilots had flown for years and years and years carrying cameras for TV shows and movies. And so they knew exactly how to maneuver the aircraft to make things look good and to get the shots that we need for whatever it is. In this case, it's Pierce Brosnan driving the future BMW, which isn't out yet, but it will be. So first it's going to be here in the movie, and then a year later you can buy one. So he's driving this thing through the oil derricks in Azerbaijan. And so we had done everything, and I have our director on board, and he's supervising everything. And it's a British production, so they call him the governor. Okay, governor, this is that. And this is what we're going to do next. Okay, roll camera. And so we finished our shot list, and I said to the governor, I said, hey, you want to see something? And he goes, oh, all right, go ahead. And so I told the pilot, I said, listen, go way far offshore. We're out over the Caspian Sea, and get low and come straight at the oil rigs, and so that you can find the car between the oil rigs. And I'll tell you when to start climbing, and you come up through the oil rigs, and I'll be zoomed all the way in. So I go, okay. So I mean, these movie pilots are just geniuses of camera movement. So he knew exactly what to do. So he takes us out offshore. We get low over the water. We come 100 miles an hour towards the shoreline. And Pierce Brosnan is just driving this fancy BMW sports car through all the oil rigs. on these dirt roads. And I said, okay, ready, climb, 3, 2, 1. So the pilot smoothly starts to lift us up as we're charging towards the shoreline. And the oil rigs come down through the frame like a curtain. And boom, you can see this vast field of oil derricks. And in there is this crazy little car that's zigzagging between the oil rigs. And that's James Bond. So, of course, forget all the stuff we had already shot. That was the shot they used in the movie.
Wow.
I got to go back and watch that now. And this was when the Z4 came out, right? The BMW or Z8 or Z4?
Z8.
Yeah.
I don't remember what BMW it was. I just know you couldn't buy one. It had come from BMW for the movie, as they do on James Bond movies. And the cool factor was, okay, you can see it, James Bond driving it in this movie, and then once the car comes available, then you could actually buy one.
I remember that car because at that time I was working in a car dealership in Beverly Hills, and across the street was a BMW dealership who had that same exact car, but it wasn't available for sale yet. It had like, the tape around it, whatever it was, and people can just come and pre-order it, but they were waiting for the release of the James Bond before they started selling that car.
Yeah, this was pre-Aston Martin, because I think it was after World Is Not Enough where they went with the Aston Martin after.
Yeah, I'm not involved with those decisions.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what did the older ones drive? Weren't the older ones the Austins?
During Sean Connery, they were Aston Martins.
Yeah.
But for Pierce, I remember in Tomorrow Never Dies, he had the 7 Series. And I think it was GoldenEye. I don't remember what GoldenEye was. I think, was GoldenEye a Z3 Roadster? But I remember Tomorrow Never Dies was the 7 Series, where he was sitting in the back with his little controller, driving the car.
That one I don't remember.
Yeah, and then in Die Another Day, that's when the Aston Martin was introduced. And that was a beauty. But going back to you starting in the industry, an event took place where you got very, very busy in the industry, and you were essentially a workaholic. But mom got sick.
Yeah,
and you were in Melbourne, right? When the call came in from your mom's boyfriend?
Yeah. So I would just routinely work 90 hours a week.
Routinely. Routinely.
No one told me. They didn't say, oh, you got to do this, this, and this. I would just do it. I just loved my job. I loved the work. I would just work all the time.
Well, they say love what you do and you'll never work in a day in your life.
Well, that was me. I absolutely enjoyed the work that I was doing. And so I would just work all the time. And, I wasn't a good son. I sometimes I would miss family functions. And if I was supposed to go see my folks, and I just say, sorry, I can't make it this weekend. And one time we were on the phone, I was talking to my mom's boyfriend, and I was saying, well, I can't come this weekend. I got stuff I got to do for work. And he said, you need to come. And I said, oh, okay. So I dropped what I was doing and drove home, and come to find out my mom was in the hospital, and she had fallen suddenly ill with cancer. She had cancer prior to this, and it had come back. And by the time they realized it, the cancer was so bad that it had gone throughout her body. It was in her liver and in her bones. And so the doctors are telling me that, she's going to die, and it's going to happen quickly. We don't know if it could be a number of days or weeks, but this cancer is going to take her very quickly. And I could see my mom through the glass in her room. And I went in and talked to her. And, I was such an idiot at that stage of my life. I just didn't know anything about anything. I had no life skills either. Forget job skills. I had no life skills either. And so I had just gone from, living my life, doing whatever, to all of a sudden I find out, well, mom is dying and it won't be long. And I was in no way prepared to handle that or deal with it. And I just didn't know how to get through this. And so I went and saw my mom in the room, and she said, "We'll get through this." And I don't know how she could say that, because she's talking about her own death. And that's what a strong, classy lady she was. She was just such a strong person. And she said, "We'll get through this." And so that basically ended my movie career. I called my boss at Westcam, and I said, my mom is very sick, and so I'm going to have to stay here. So I went from working 90 hours a week to working 0, and I just stayed with my mom. And it's really fortuitous that I came to see her when I did. It's good that her boyfriend told me to come when he did, because that was the last day I could talk to her. The next day, she was on so much pain medication that she lapsed into a coma, and she never woke up.
When was the last time you had seen her prior to you flying out or driving out to see her in the hospital?
It had been a while. I'm not sure how long, but it had been a while. I was just working all the time. I was always working somewhere.
Were there any regrets when you got there?
No, I just didn't know how to do what comes next. I just didn't have those kind of life skills. And I really was just this very clueless, very happy, but very clueless person. And so my mom got so sick so suddenly. I felt fortunate that I had gotten to speak to her. I got to talk to her one last time. And I felt like nobody else is going to have that. All of her friends and the rest of my family is not going to be able to come see her in time before she passes. And so I was sitting there and I was thinking about it, and my mom's unconscious with all these drugs that she's on. And this voice just came over me and told me this crazy thing to call grandma and put her on the phone. And it didn't make sense. It was like, why would I do that? I didn't understand what I was being told, but this voice kept insisting. It was like telling me over and over again, call grandma and put her on the phone. So I said, well, okay. So I got the phone and I dialed my grandma, and I said, "Grandma," and grandma was super distraught because she was sick too, and she couldn't come visit. And the family had been informed how sick my mom was, and everybody knew that she was going to die, very soon. And so they went from hearing that mom was sick to also she's going to be gone very soon. So grandma was all stressed out with that knowledge. And so now her phone rings and it's me on the phone, and I said, "Grandma,
Take your time, Dave.
I explained to her the best I could. I said, my mom can't talk to you, but I know she can hear you." That's all I told her. And I took the phone and I set it next to my mom's ear. And grandma talked for a long time. So I'm a few feet away from the phone. I can't hear what she's saying, but she's just talking and talking and talking. And I'm such an idiot. I never would have thought to do that. But as I'm listening, and I know grandma is just talking and talking to my mom, her daughter. And I feel a very profound realization of I don't know what this is, but I know it's important. And so she talked for a long time. And when the phone finally went quiet, I picked it up and I said, "Hello, Grandma." And she said, "Hello, sweetie." And she just sounded like this massive weight had been lifted. She just sounded like this huge burden had been taken off of her shoulders. And the family found out that this phone call had happened, and they all were amazed that I had thought to do this for Grandma, and I really hadn't. It was like I had been told to do it, and it was important, but I never would have thought of it, and that was the last time that my grandma got to speak to my mom.
I'm curious, how much longer after that conversation did your mom pass away?
It wasn't long. That was the problem. It was that, and even at my early age, I did have enough presence of mind to figure out that I was one of the lucky ones. I got to speak to my mom before she passed, but the whole rest of the family and all of her friends, there wasn't time for them to come visit.
The reason I asked that is because, that's my line of work that I'm in. I deal with hospice patients who are in their last chapter of their life, and I've had many, many situations with patients where, for instance, I can visibly see that it's literally they're at the end, but there's something that they're holding on to. They're not letting go. And then we start digging kind of, okay, do you have a loved one somewhere? Like, as far as we'll talk to the family, well, yeah, she has a sister she hasn't talked to in Florida in 15 years, or has a brother or a son or a daughter. And then we'll connect them to that individual, whether if they're close enough, they'll come by, see that loved one or patient, or maybe get on a phone call. And sometimes it's that closure that they're looking for to be able to let go and pass on to the afterlife. So that's why I was curious, how long after that phone call did she let go?
It wasn't long. There was only one other. My mom had a pretty good sized family, and there was only one other relative that got to come see her before she passed away. Grandma definitely couldn't come because she was sick too, and so there wasn't time, and it just wasn't possible. And so I did not know what I was doing. I didn't know anything of what you just said. I didn't know any of that. I just had this voice in my head that said, call Grandma and put her on the phone. And it made no sense to me. Why would I put my mom on the phone with anyone? She can't talk. But it was just this voice of just saying, call Grandma and put her on the phone. And after I did it, I could see, oh, this needed to happen.
You did the right thing for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, remember the story of my grandfather? Not my grandfather, but the story of my wife's grandfather.
Yeah.
It was the same situation where he got sick and his health declined very quickly, and it got to the point where he was basically on meds at home, and the doctors, the nurses, they were saying any day now, any day now, any day now. And one day, all the grandkids were at his house, bedside with him. And it was very late at night. We were getting ready to leave. And Grandma said, why don't you guys say the Lord's Prayer? Because Grandpa was very religious. He would go to church every Sunday. Grandma said, why don't you guys say the Lord's Prayer before you leave today? And with all the grandkids, they stood there bedside to Grandpa. They said the Lord's Prayer, and we all left. I got home, and the drive was like 5 minutes. I got home, and we were getting ready for bed, and my phone rang. Not my wife's. My phone rang, and it was my wife's cousin. And she's like, I was getting ready to leave, and as soon as everybody was out the door, Grandpa passed. It was like he was waiting for that one moment where all the grandkids were there, and they did that one thing that he loved, which was pray. And they prayed with him, and he just let go. It was his time.
Some doctors treat pain, others help you understand it. Dr. Rafi Gureghian has dedicated his career to helping people live stronger, healthier, and more aware of their bodies. His approach goes beyond quick fixes. It's about rebuilding movement, discipline, and mindset. A true professional who's changing the way people think about health and recovery. Presented by the WiseNuts Podcast, highlighting leaders who make a difference.
When you're involved in an accident, choosing the right attorney is the most important decision you could ever make. Let us show you why Megeredchian Law is different from everybody else. With a full litigation team of over 11 attorneys, we're able to take your case to trial. More importantly, the foundational pedigree of our business is customer service, so you'll always get a call. And lastly, we're results driven. We win. Let us show you how. Give us a call, 818-530-1300 or www.bestcaraccidentattorney.com.
You know, everyone has their own opinion of religion and spirituality and what happens when you die. My experience of my mom getting sick, similar to your grandpa, was that the one uncle who came to visit, he was able to get there in time before she passed. And he was a very religious dude, and none of us were. And so we all felt this really just all-consuming need to sort of connect in some way with a higher power. And so my uncle prayed with us over my mom, and it was just like it fed everyone's soul just to have some way to connect with what's happening and how to get through it. And it's a really important thing at that chapter of life, I think.
Now, where was Dad in this whole picture?
Well, my dad and my mom had split up years before. So when I was 17, they split up, and my dad moved out, and he lived like the next town over. So,
What kind of relationship did you have with Dad?
Interesting relationship with Dad. My dad always described himself as an alcoholic, and I know what a functional alcoholic is just by being around one. He described himself as an alcoholic. I knew he would come home from work every day and drink, and you know, there's family relationships with an alcoholic in the house is tough. So,
You talked about that in your book, how they would have some arguments, your mom and dad, and then your mom would explain to you, that doesn't mean we don't love each other. It's just part of marriage. And
yeah, when I was little, besides floating out the window and over the top of the house, one of my earliest memories of life is my mom and dad fighting in the kitchen and slamming things. And I think for kids who grew up with an alcoholic in the house, that's the kind of thing that they grow up with. And it's really traumatic. And I think it can kind of mess you up.
is that why you don't drink?
Yeah, that's why I never touched alcohol till I was, I think, in my 30s, because my dad described himself as an alcoholic. I never saw him ever in my life as a kid. Never saw him not drink. And he had told me, and the family had told me, that his dad, basically, they said, drank himself to death. And so I said, well, if it's in grandpa's DNA and if it's in dad's DNA, is sure as hell's in my DNA. So I shouldn't go near that stuff. So all of my friends, when I was growing up, getting into high school, all my friends were drinking and partying every weekend. And I just absolutely stayed away, never touched alcohol, because I was afraid I would end up like my dad, where like I couldn't stop myself from drinking.
Did you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have one sister.
Older or younger?
Older.
How'd your sister take the divorce and obviously mom's passing?
I think for all of us, she had already moved out by then, but I think for all of us, it was a relief, because living with an alcoholic is, I guess it's like walking on eggshells all the time. You just never know what's going to set them off and start them yelling and stuff. And so that was the kind of environment I grew up in. So when my dad moved out and left, that stopped.
It was kind of relief at that point.
Yeah, it was peace for the first time.
What was your sister's reaction to you putting grandma on the phone?
I don't remember her saying. I'm sure she had talked to the other women in the family, because it basically, all the women in the family were talking about it. Like it was this huge deal. And I didn't expect that. I just thought it was some strange request I had gotten. And then after it happened, I thought, oh, well, that makes sense now. Like that needed to happen. I'm glad I did that. But I didn't think anything more than that. But among the women in the family, they were all amazed that like I had put that together and figured out to do it. And which was not the case. I had been told to do it. But to the women in the family, this like they knew the second they heard it, they just knew, oh, wow, that phone call had to happen.
Do these voices come to you often?
The book is called Help from Above. And there's a lot of stories in the book where I don't know how to do what comes next. And I definitely have been told some odd things, and I've done them all. And that was one of them. And I definitely feel like I've been very much helped in my life, very much helped. One of my other earlier memories when I was a little kid, this is a typical example. My parents at the time owned a rental property. They owned a rental house that they rented out. And I went there with my dad. He was like getting it ready for the next renters or something. And I'm off by myself. Maybe I was 7 or 8. I was off by myself, and it was one of those houses that's up on blocks. So I went like down underneath the house, and there was a clear bag of water underneath the house. It's like this clear plastic bag with a white spout, and it's full of water. I know what this is. This is if you're in the desert, this is how you drink water. Because I had seen movies where people are in the desert and they have a bag of water and they drink it, and that's how they stay alive in the desert. And I said, this is one of those. That's so cool, and I'm going to drink it. And this voice, it's hard to explain, but it was this voice that said, pour it on the ground. And I was like, why would I pour it on the ground? That makes no sense. It's a waste of water. And this voice just wouldn't have it. This voice just kept telling me, pour it on the ground. Oh, okay. So I took the bag of water and I poured it on the ground. And I'm underneath this house. Like no one knows I'm down here. And the ground starts bubbling. and bubbling and bubbling. And now there's like this foam that's coming up out of the earth where I had poured the water. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, oh shit, what is that? Why is the water doing that? And I asked my dad about it. And I said, there's this bag of water, but when you pour it on the ground, it starts bubbling. And his eyes got wide. And he goes, that's hydrochloric acid. They use that to clean concrete. And I was going to drink it. And the only reason I didn't drink it is because this voice wouldn't let me. It just kept insisting that I pour it on the ground. And I didn't know why. It made no sense, but I just did it because I was told. And sure enough,
Saved your life.
saved my life.
David, have these voices come to you at all during work or during, I don't know, filming?
They definitely have come at, like I said, at odd times. And one day when I was, let's see, I might have been 28, I think. The voice told me to leave my job, to quit.
That's when you quit during
That's when I quit.
when you went to see your mom.
Yeah, so that was this was after my mom had passed away 3 years prior. But one day the voice says, "Walk away." And like every other time, I'm like, "Walk away? What? I love my job. Why would I walk away from that?" And it didn't make any sense to me that this voice just kept saying, "Walk away and spend time with your friends and your family." Because this was during the way that they would ship me around the earth to work on these TV shows and movies. I literally would walk into the office like on Monday. Yeah, I'm just going to work on the camera. And then Thursday or Friday, we're going to ship one to the next James Cameron movie in Mexico and get ready for that. And I walk in the office and they go, "You're going to Germany tomorrow." And I would say, "Oh, okay." And I would go to Germany and I would just disappear. I was pretty much impossible to reach a lot of times. We didn't have smartphones back then.
Yeah.
And cell phones were new. So there was a lot of times where you couldn't even get a hold of me because I would be in some other country and there's just no way to even get me on a phone. And that was the life I lived, and I loved everything about it. I was so happy. Like, you're going
Did
to
you have a
Germany.
relationship or were you single?
Let's see. Then I was single.
Because I would imagine it'd be tough to be in a relationship if you're just
Couldn't plan anything. I couldn't plan to go to if you lived next door to me, I couldn't plan to go to your barbecue.
Yeah.
Because I would walk in the office and they would say, "You're going to be in another country tomorrow."
for the next 60 days or 90 days.
And I would go, "Oh, okay." And if you lived next door to me, you would just notice, "Oh, Dave's not here."
And how long after your mom's passing and, your family kind of coming together and all that, did you jump back on the saddle and go back to filming? And
Funny you should say that because I am always happy. I'm just always happy. And when my mom passed away, like I said, I didn't have the life skills. I didn't know how to handle that. And it was the first time I experienced depression. It was like a physical thing. It was like this blanket that came over me. And I'm always happy. And I never need anything. I'm just happy. But when my mom passed away, it was like this suffocating weight that came down over me and I couldn't escape it. It was just with me 24 hours a day. And to make it worse, I would go to sleep. Pretty much on a nightly basis, I would go to sleep and dream that my mom was alive. So I would just go to sleep and I was really depressed and and in my dream, my mom is alive and she's back and she's healthy and we're together and we're talking. And and I kept having these dreams over and over where I was just so happy.
How long did that go on for?
I don't remember. It just was a nightly thing. I was super depressed and it was like physically draining on me. And it's the first time I had ever been sad like that in my life. And it just like sucked the life out of me. And then I would go to sleep at night and in my dream, my mom is back. she's alive, she's healthy, she's not sick, she's not in pain. We're just enjoying life again. And it was like the sun. I would go to sleep, and in my dream, the sun would come up again, and everything was back to normal and good. And then something would happen, and it was always like one of my dreams. Everything's good, and all of a sudden I realized that there's a snake in the room with us, like underneath the bed, and I'm trying to tell her, Mom, there's a snake there. It's like a venomous snake, but she can't hear me. She's right next to me, but she can't hear me. She doesn't understand what I'm saying. And I know the snake's going to bite her. And then that's it. I wake up. I'm all short of breath because I was panicking because the snake was about to bite her. It's a venomous snake. And these are the dreams I would have every night, night after night. And so I had this weird, unreasonable wish. I wanted to speak to her again. Now that I'm awake, and I'm all sad again because she's gone. And I had this really unreasonable wish to speak to her again, just to talk to her again. And it made no sense, but I just wanted it with every fiber of my being, every cell in my body. I just wanted to speak to my mom again. And one day the phone rang, and it was a very close friend who was kind of like my second mom. And Donna was a really tough lady, and she kind of became like my second mom after my mom passed away, and we would talk all the time. And she lived just down the street to where I grew up, and I would talk to her a lot. And one day she calls, and she sounds weird, like she's not comfortable, like something's off. And we're talking, and at one point in the conversation, she says, "Sweetie, I don't know how to tell you this, but your mom is here." And I said, "What?" Your mom is here, sweetie. I don't know why, and I don't know how this works, but I think I'm supposed to tell you about it. And I said, huh. And all of a sudden, it just hit me. I said, okay, I'm going to ask you a question that my mom would know and you wouldn't know. And she goes, okay, go ahead. And I said, Myrna. And she goes, without any hesitation, I said, Myrna. And she said, sister. And I have an aunt, Myrna, that Donna had never met. She never met my aunts and uncles. She didn't know that I have an aunt, Myrna, in Miami. And it just kind of shocked me. Like, oh my God, the only person that knows who Myrna is on this phone conversation is me and my mom. So I thought, oh, wow. So my mom didn't just cease to exist when she died. It's not like she's just a vacuum, just gone. Like she's still somewhere. And so I asked, is mom in pain? And Donna said, yeah, she's fine, sweetie. She's not in any pain, but she's worried about you. And which is how my mom was. My whole childhood growing up.
Like all moms.
Yeah. And so probably another reason I knew it was her. She's fine. She's not in any pain, but she's worried about you. And that was such a relief to me because I was so depressed. And I wasn't dealing well with my mom's death. And so, she found a way to send me a message after she passed. And for me, thank God she did it. It was, now I kind of felt like grandma, where this huge burden had just been lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't worried about my mom anymore after that.
When you're involved in an accident, choosing the right attorney is the most important decision you could ever make. Let us show you why Megeredchian Law is different from everybody else. With a full litigation team of over 11 attorneys, we're able to take your case to trial. More importantly, the foundational pedigree of our business is customer service, so you'll always get a call. And lastly, we're results driven. We win. Let us show you how. Give us a call, 818-530-1300 or www.bestcaraccidentattorney.com.
Some doctors treat pain, others help you understand it. Dr. Rafi Gureghian has dedicated his career to helping people live stronger, healthier, and more aware of their bodies. His approach goes beyond quick fixes. It's about rebuilding movement, discipline, and mindset. A true professional who's changing the way people think about health and recovery. Presented by the WiseNuts Podcast, highlighting leaders who make a difference.
Technology should move your business forward, not hold it back. At Titan Elite IT Services and Consulting, we make sure it does. Our clients don't wait days for help. They get real-time answers, fast resolutions, and dedicated support, both on-site and remote. From Los Angeles to Orange and Ventura counties, our coverage is local, statewide, and nationwide. When you need us, we're already on the way. We're not just an MSP. We build with you, from cloud migration to security to every endpoint in your network.
At Titan Elite, we don't just solve problems. We prevent them from happening. We become a part of your team and we grow with you.
Titan Elite IT Services and Consulting. Strategic, scalable, trusted, and always on.
So, David, were you on any sort of medication?
Zero.
No antidepressants?
I don't know if they gave those out back then, but I wasn't on anything. I didn't drink. I was on no medication. I'm a super, super happy person all the time. My whole life, this was the first time I had ever experienced depression. And it was like a physical, I mean, obviously I was just out of my mind with sadness, but it was like a physical phenomenon for me. It just like, it was like walking through quicksand every day, all day long.
And I'm glad you didn't seek it through other avenues, such as alcohol. Because a lot of people, when they lose somebody, they seek some sort of acceptance or some sort of grievance through another channel. And, you mentioned alcoholism in your family bloodline.
Yeah.
And we're glad that wasn't one of the avenues that you went through. As soon as you were talking about, something about when somebody passes and supernatural things, something like that, do you really believe that mom is just amongst us walking around?
I don't have a belief one way or another. And when I wrote Help from Above, I didn't want to step on people's religions. So in the book, I tell that story, but I don't say what it is or what it means. I just explain what happened, what I experienced, what I was told on the phone, the question I had asked that only my mom would know, and the answer that came back instantly from someone who had never met my Aunt Myrna. And I leave it at that.
And another incident took place as well, right? Off camera, we were talking about it. What was that other incident that took place where there was a friend of yours? With a friend of yours.
Yeah. The second time I got depressed was when one of my best friends on earth died in a helicopter crash. And he and I flew together so much that when he crashed and was killed, everyone just assumed I was killed too, because that's how often we worked together and flew together on TV shows. And so once again, I was just dragging. I knew the risks of our industry of flying cameras for TV shows and movies. You can hit stuff and things can happen. You can have an accident and be killed. And I was aware of that. And I thought I could handle if it ever happened to someone I knew. But when David Gibbs was killed in a helicopter crash, I didn't handle it well at all. And once again, I was just depressed. And let me think of what happened first. The first thing that happened was I was walking through an airport in Canada to go to a TV show and rig the helicopter camera. And this voice came over me and it said, call Aaron. And this Aaron, I'm being told to call, as a famous stunt pilot. And I said, no, I'm not calling Aaron. It's Sunday. He's home with his family. He doesn't want to be bothered. And the voice kid just kept telling me, call Aaron, and asked to speak to his wife. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. It's Sunday. Aaron's wife is a busy attorney. She's enjoying time with her family. She doesn't want to be bothered with some goofy conversation with some idiot in an airport.
This conversation going on in your head, though, right? It's not like out loud, is it?
Well, mostly.
I just want to make sure.
So this voice won't let me alone. And I'm just trying to walk through the airport, and it just keeps telling me, call Aaron and talk to his wife. I am not doing that. And I did, at some point, I said no out loud. I said, no, I'm not doing it. And the voice went away. I won that one. Go on about my day. I'm not going to call anybody and bother them on Sunday. And then
You still, at this point, you still haven't learned your lesson to listen to the voice.
I'm not that smart. That's something that I hope is clear in my book. I'm not that smart. And so I think argument's over. I'm going to go on about my day. And then it might have been a day or two later, my phone rings. And it's a very dear friend of mine who never met David Gibbs. And she says something I did not expect. She's on the phone and she says, tell your friend Dave Gibbs I said thank you. And what? He's dead. He died in a helicopter crash a month ago. And she never met him. I don't even know how she knows his name. And so I'm saying, okay, what? And she goes, check your email. And so I open my email, and it's a picture of my ex. It's a mugshot. And I'm looking at this. And now Angela's still on the phone with me, and she goes, did Justine get arrested? And I said, not that I know of. And she goes, well, your friend Dave Gibbs sent me this. And she never met him. And he died a month ago in a helicopter crash. And the one thing about Dave Gibbs that he watched me go through was I was just treated like garbage in family courts and by my little one's mom. And they took him away from me, and his whole life, I just kept asking for equal time, and they never gave it to me. And Dave Gibbs saw me. He saw me going through that. And I don't know how this works, but apparently as he was floating down a tunnel to some bright light or something, he became aware of all of this and made sure that he got a hold of my friend and sent her my ex's mugshot. And he knew that this would have implications to our child custody case, where I've never to this day been allowed to have equal time with my son.
Was it an active case at the time?
Oh yeah. It's always been active because they've just never, between my ex and her lawyers, they've just never let me just enjoy my time with our son.
How old was your son when you guys went through the divorce?
We were never married.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. He was 10 months old when she says, don't come home. I go, don't come home. Why wouldn't I come home? What the hell?
Was there a reason?
No. No reason from my part.
So it was all right. Congratulations. We just had a baby boy.
Oh my God.
He's 10 months old. And look, women go through certain hormonal
Postpartum depression.
cycles and postpartum depression and all that. But for her to turn around at 10, with the baby being 10 months and just say, don't come home. Did you ever later on down the line, maybe when he was I don't know, 2, 1.5, 3, whatever age it was, kind of reach out and try to rekindle the relationship?
Rekindle? How can I let his home be broken up? He's 10-month-old baby. And we're engaged. We're supposed to be married and live our lives together. And we don't even argue. We're not even fighting. She just like out of the blue, like a bolt of lightning, calls on the phone one day. So we're together in the morning. I love you too. See you later. Okay. And then I get a phone call in the afternoon. Don't come home. And I'm like, don't come home. Why wouldn't I not come home? Where else am I going to go? And it was like a bolt of lightning. And unbeknownst to me, she had been scheming for like months to just discard me out of her life. And what's weird is like, as far as like child custody goes, I think it's fair to say I was never treated correctly by her or by the courts. It was never, okay, well, you guys aren't together anymore, so the child can spend some time with you and the child can spend some time with mom, and the child therefore gets what he needs.
Was this in California?
Yeah. Instead, I was just like every 2 years, I get a stack of papers of nonsense. It's just a stack of nonsense. And usually it's been written by an attorney and it's all printed out and it's just page after page after page. I put one in a Dropbox and posted it on social media one time because I was just like, I don't know what else to do except let you guys read it and see what you think, and that was the one thing that scared her more than anything throughout all these years. The one thing that scared her the most was when I put that stack of papers out to the public.
Kind of made it public, because the court system, it's so flawed in California. I don't know what it's like outside because we're so used to seeing friends, family, and obviously ourselves go through the court systems here in Cali. It's just the attorneys get rich, the courts get rich, and it drains the shit out of all of us, not only emotionally, not only physically, but on a financial note as well. These people it's just ridiculous what they put individuals through. But in your case, I can't even imagine what it's like not being able to go home, hold your child, and help raise a person that you helped bring into this world.
I didn't handle it well. I hope that's clear in the book because I put some of these stories in the book and I explain how I went to family court with a picture book of me and my son to show how much I enjoyed spending time with him, how much time we actually spend together, which was a lot. And I didn't deal with it well. I did everything wrong. That's just kind of how I live. I just do things wrong. I'm just dumb about things. But what happened was some stuff becomes clear because I didn't hire an attorney and go to war and spend all my money and try to ruin her life and take everything away from her, because I just said, look, I don't know what's going on here. This makes no sense to me. We were happy and in love, and now I'm being taken out with the trash. However, I think it's good for our son that he gets time with mom and time with dad. And it's supposed to be in the same house, but that's not up to me. So I'm just going to make the best of this. And so my approach was just let me just have equal time with him. That's all I ever asked for. And instead, I get whatever I get. And then every couple of years, I get another stack of papers filed to completely remove me from his life. It's going on to this day. To this day, I get these.
And how old is he now?
He'll be 16 in October. And so I just got the latest stack. And it's nonsense. Like if I read through it, it's just nonsense.
What is your relationship with your son?
It's always been good.
Do you guys talk at all?
Yeah, we talk about everything. Once he became about age 7, I never made decisions without him because he basically became as smart as me when he was 7. And so I never like dictated to him like what we're going to do next, or this is, I always just sort of like, okay, these are our choices. So what do you want to do? So I'm very much made to be a dad. So my life, he never went without seeing me because I was chasing women or out, drinking beer with the boys. I absolutely loved all of my time with them. So we spent a lot of time together when he was little. And meanwhile, I just every couple of years I get this giant package of papers saying how I can't be around him.
Wow. I
Yeah.
think
Unbelievable.
I learned so much about the court system. I handled it completely wrong. I represented myself, and what I discovered was from like behind the scenes, I discovered how the court system works and what's wrong with it, why it's fundamentally dysfunctional, and why it does so much evil while paying these people who run it a mountain of money, no matter how bad they do in a case. It's like you read the newspaper and you're like, this poor lady was killed on a train, and the guy who killed her was in jail 14 times, and 14 times they let him out. And everyone who did that got rich. The lawyers got rich, the judge got rich, and they don't care. They moved on to the next case. It's just academic to them, and it's money to them. Doesn't regard the outcome of any case doesn't matter. They're going to get rich from one case to the next. And they'll argue about anything. They'll say anything. They'll do the worst evil imaginable, and they'll get rich in the process. And that's, once you see how the courts operate, it's like,
There's no regard for human life. It's just a case number. You're a case number to them.
yeah.
Right and wrong don't matter. Right and wrong definitely don't matter. The law matters a little bit, but not really. It really comes down to billable hours, and those never stop. So like I said, I did it wrong. I was really dumb about it. I approached it the way a child would approach family court. But what it did was it sort of revealed family court in an unusual way. Because I would just go to court and sit and watch, because I'd wanted to be respectful to the court. I don't want to be a jackass and say the wrong stuff. So I would just go sit and watch. And therefore, I got to see how the family courts work. And I put that in the book. So a lot of people come to me and they've read Help from Above, and lots of dads and guys will walk up, shake my hand, go, dude, the stuff you said about court is exactly what happened to me. Except he spent $280,000 on attorney's fees, and he still got ripped off times 10, and so I feel stupid for how I went about it. And yet when I talk to really smart people, they all tell me the same thing. It's like family court is just this bear trap for dads, and they don't even know they're stepping into it. They know after they've suffered in it. But as they're entering into it or being dragged into it, they don't know how it works.
Well, look at it this way. You've saved a shit ton of money on attorney fees.
I have no regrets. I'm glad I did what I did. I'm glad I didn't ever try to screw mom out of time, or, when my friend died in a helicopter crash, he sent me her mugshot. I didn't know she had been arrested for DUI on one of her custodial days. And I would have gone my whole life and not known that. And so once I knew that, I didn't take the mugshot and run straight to family court and try and kick her out of the kid's life. I would never do that, because I feel like that's his mom. He only has one mom, and he needs to have time with his mom and his dad, as long as it's safe to do so. That's what's the best for him. So I never varied from that. I never tried to take advantage and leverage her out the way she did to me. So even though she went to jail and I have not, I never delivered a 2-inch stack of papers saying why she can never be around our son.
You have such a unique personality. It's so fascinating to sit here and listen to these stories that you have, and genuinely you feel this happy energy from you, even from the text messages. Speaking to David, via text, you can tell like there's this just different energy coming from you. I mean, let me put it to you this way: you're a gentleman that won multiple Emmys, and when you received the actual invitation to come to the Emmys to receive your award, you threw the damn letter away.
I always threw the Emmy nominations in the trash because I would have to stop working, and I worked all the time, so I would have to stop working. I'd have to go to Hollywood and hang out at some party where everyone's drinking and partying, and get red carpet and get something, and it just was not for me. It had not enough interest. And so for years, I threw the Emmy letters in the trash. And once I wrote Help from Above and I needed to share stories with people, I thought, oh, maybe I should actually go. And so then I started taking the nomination and putting on a tuxedo, and I would go to the...
And how many Emmys did you win?
I think it's either 6 or 7.
You don't have the actual awards, or
well, he does. He took a selfie and he sent it to me, and it's literally in the background in his office.
I never tracked it. And one day someone got mad at me on social media, and they said, "Oh, this doesn't sound like an Emmy award winning photographer from The Amazing Race." And I thought, this dude looked me up. I didn't know I had an Emmy for that show. And I probably have, I could easily have a half a dozen nominations just for Amazing Race.
Wow.
And you're not even aware of it.
I never kept track of it. I never looked into it.
Because I did the same thing with my Nobel Peace Prize nomination.
Oh, yeah.
I just shred it every year.
Yeah, why waste time?
Exactly.
Who needs another party?
Amazing Race, Deadliest Catch. You've been involved in all of these amazing shows. If you guys haven't watched them, look, you could stream a lot of stuff online. Go online, check it out. David has had an amazing hand in filming a lot of these shows. But you had a couple of questions for us before we wrap up the show, which we're curious about. We have no idea what you're going to ask.
For 2 hours, we talked about everything but Deadliest Catch, as far as he's in the middle of the ocean, the Arctic. Is that where you guys are? Right?
Yeah, the Bering Sea.
But how many times have you spoken about that on podcasts?
Oh, that's a great question. That's pretty much all we talk about on podcasts. This is the one podcast where it never came up.
Okay, fine. Tiny's going to be upset with you.
Oh no. What are we going to do there?
Well, if you ever have some time and you're bored and you want to get into the stories of all the adventures of Deadliest Catch,
it's an excuse to bring you back then.
Yeah.
So my questions for you is a lot of basic questions, because I listen to the show all the time. You guys are always talking about Armenia this and Armenia that, and I don't really know the story of Armenia. I kind of know where it is on the globe. So what's Armenia?
Ooh.
What's Armenia?
That's a loaded question. Armenia is probably one of the oldest civilizations known to man.
Oh.
We are the first Christian nation, or we're the first nation to adopt Christianity as a whole. Dude.
First winemakers.
6,000-year-old winery.
At least over 6,000 years ago, yeah.
And if you read the Bible, Noah's Ark landed on Mount Ararat, which is technically Armenia.
Oh, wow. So it's actually a really important place.
Dude, that's a loaded question.
Was it always called Armenia, or was it called
It was
something?
always called Armenia.
Okay.
I mean, we've battled the Romans, we've battled the Greeks, we've battled the Ottomans. There is so much history behind it. We've gone through a genocide. In 1915, 1.5 million Armenians were massacred by the Ottoman Turks, which at the same time we think Israel had a hand in it, or the Jews had a hand in it, but that's another topic in its own.
What language do you speak?
Armenian.
Okay, so you have your own language.
Yeah.
We have our own language, our own alphabet.
Did the Turks come after Armenians because they're Christians?
The Turks, you know what? Again, we don't think Turkey is an actual nation in itself. The Turks are Mongols who occupied the Caucasus of modern day Turkey today, who basically interbreeded with Armenians, Greeks, Assyrians, and turned into what they are today.
Okay, so you have your own language. Because when I worked on James Bond, I was in Azerbaijan, which is next door, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because Azerbaijan is like 95 or 98% Muslim, I was told.
Yes.
So that could be awkward. If you're a Christian nation.
It is awkward because we are landlocked among Muslim countries. So we have Iran below us, Turkey to our west, Azerbaijan to our east. And we are actually in Azerbaijan ethnically cleansed 150,000 Armenians from a region called Artsakh or Nagorno-Karabakh, where 150,000 Armenians were ethnically cleansed from that land because Azerbaijan claimed it to be theirs.
When was that?
This was in 2020.
Oh, Lord. That just happened.
Yeah.
Well, they started the war in 20, but they had to be displaced in 23, I think.
Yeah, in 23, it was basically set in stone that the people had to leave.
Okay. And Armenia was part of the Soviet Union?
Yes.
Armenia's been part of a lot of different empires, from the Persian Empire, the Soviet era, the Russian Empire. We again, very, very rich history.
Because when I was in Azerbaijan, the Cold War had just ended. And I read, when I was reading like where I'm going, it's like, 95 or 98% Muslim. And when I got there were no mosques. So it felt like the Soviets had established their rule.
Yes.
And I don't think that Islam was necessarily favored by the Soviet government.
They were atheist. And it happened in Armenia as well. A lot of the churches were shut down. So you couldn't, the Bolsheviks and the Soviets were atheists. So whether you were Christian, a Jew, or a Muslim, you couldn't practice any sort of religion. There was no God. The dictator, Stalin, was God. Lenin was God. Gorbachev was God. That's who God was.
Okay. Yeah, because I got there in the late 90s, and knowing that it was a Muslim country, I saw very, very few mosques, and they were all brand new. They had just been built. So it seemed like they had maybe torn them down, and now that the Soviets had left, they were starting to build mosques.
Those were actually Christian churches that they converted to mosques,
Yeah.
which was Armenian churches.
That's old Armenian land. And so is Turkey. Majority of Turkey is Armenia and Greece.
Armenia used to be from sea to sea.
Yeah. Constantinople is basically Istanbul.
Right.
So but that's
a crazy history.
We couldn't even discuss it in one podcast.
Well, I'm glad I brought it up because you guys always mention it, and I'm always listening to different episodes, and it comes up, and I don't know like what it all is that you've experienced or what you're talking about. So,
well, I'm glad we were able to clear some of it up.
Shine some light on it, huh? David, thank you so much, man. We're going to definitely have you back because we have a lot to talk about with you as well in the near future.
Maybe you'll take us on the flight.
I ain't getting on no helicopter, man. I am not getting on a helicopter.
Safer than the car
There
you drive
is
in.
no way you're getting me on a helicopter.
Well, I tell you what, I can get you to where you can watch them take off and land.
No, not a problem. I will film you guys take off. Guys, today's episode will be up and running on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major platforms mañana. WiseNutsPodcast.com. Go buy some merch. Our merch is available under $30, less than a Crappuccino. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. I'll see you guys all next week.